I've worked at places that balance by spreadsheet, and it was just a nightmare. I hate that. So,
did you kind of just start with this idea of Farkle and then Roguelike fit for that?
A roguelite, it's very, very easy to define what you're making early on.
Why did you guys end up choosing to launch in early access?
Early access is really powerful if you know what you're getting into, which is...
Welcome to the Dev Dream Podcast, featuring conversations to keep both you and me inspired in our journey of making games. Today, I got to sit down with Connagh, who is one of the two creators of Dice with Death. Now, this game has had a very successful launch, but surprisingly, it launched into early access, which I know is not the current conventional wisdom in the small team indie dev space. So I got to ask him how he was able to do that with such success. Also, interestingly enough, he was in the games industry himself and has also been on YouTube as both a Magic the Gathering player and a D&D content creator. So the conversation does focus mostly on game dev, but his wide experiences made it one of the most interesting conversations I've had. I'm really excited to share it with you, and if you enjoy it, you can let me know by hitting that subscribe button and letting the algorithm know we should show it to more people. Let's get straight to the video. Well, let's dive straight in. I think you're a really interesting guest to bring on because when I started to go through your YouTube channel, you were originally a D&D creator, hosting, D&D content.
Actually, I used to.
Go ahead and tell me about
card games. I used to play card games professionally first, actually. So I used to play a bunch of card games, mostly Magic the Gathering. That's kind of like where I guess got my most success in. But yeah, that's what I did first. I posted. Since about 2016, the D&D stuff started a few years into that, really as a more of a passion project, to be honest. It did lead to some cool opportunities, but yeah, mostly just a passion project. It was a lot of fun. It's actually how I met the guy that I make Dice with Death with. So yeah, just a disclaimer, everything I talk about me doing, I really mean me and Joel, who's the guy I make the game with, doing. But yeah, that's actually how I met him. We just met through D&D and started playing together, and that was quite a long time ago now. But yeah. Originally from the games industry, but then I did YouTube for a long time and then went back to games. So,
okay, yeah, you gave me a couple little nuggets there that I actually didn't come across. So you said you were originally in the games industry before even starting YouTube? Yeah. Can you just give me maybe a quick history of how you got through all of that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was attending university in Cambridge, doing computer science with a focus on games engine technology. So I was primarily learning in like early Unity and Unreal Engine 3, like way back when. And then from there I got an internship at a company called Jagex, who make RuneScape, which is quite a popular online MMO. And I worked there for a couple of years. While I was there, I was working on a project that was a card game. I've always been a fan of card games. I've always enjoyed them. Just personally, I played Magic for the first time. With like my older half brother and his friends when I was like 6 or 7. So I've always enjoyed card games, or been aware of them at least. And when I was working there, I ended up working on one, and we got to realizing that one of the things you learn, and we'll probably talk about this later, but one of the things that you learn is when you make a game, people often don't play it how you expect them to play it. And, there might be things that they bump into that you've gone blind to and you don't realize that they're hard or, need explaining. And so I started making videos. We were a pretty small team. The company's big, but we were a pretty small team in the company. And we needed somebody to, make videos playing the game and, explaining, hey, here's how you play this character and here's how you play this deck and stuff. And, I was big into Hearthstone and stuff at the time, big into Magic. And so I just ended up doing that. And it turned into doing it in my spare time on a personal channel, like a side project. And basically a year later, I was making more from it, to be blunt, than making it from my job. And of course, I was 25, I guess, 24, 25. And the opportunity to do YouTube was amazing. So I kind of I guess now in hindsight, essentially I took a sabbatical and did YouTube for a while. And that's how I kind of got into it. But eventually, I just realized, making games is what I enjoy doing, is essentially like an art form, I guess. So I went back to it. But yeah, I know it's a very unusual trajectory, but I'm very lucky in being able to do that stuff. So
Yeah, I'm super excited to get to unpack a little bit more of that story. And yeah, I have definitely like game design decisions to dive into later. Crazy that you worked
Yeah,
on
sure.
RuneScape. That was definitely
Mm.
like, I think I was in junior high when I kind of like fell in love with RuneScape and all my friends are into it. And
Yeah.
so super like, it's not a game that I ended up playing for like years and years, but it was like a really important game in my
Oh, me
gaming
too. Yeah,
history.
yeah. I
So what?
remember when RuneScape 2 first came out, which was like 3D RuneScape for those of us who are younger than 30. When it changed from classic to RuneScape 2, it became like like the trend, like the fad at my school at the time. So we all started playing, and yeah, to then end up like 10 years after that or more, I guess. Like working on it was really surreal, but it was very very cool. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. What did you actually work on in RuneScape?
So I originally joined as a QA analyst, so like somewhere between a QA tester and like a QA tools developer technically, but obviously it was like 95% just QA testing. Um, and then through doing those videos, I eventually actually bizarrely, well, it's a little bit fuzzy because I ended up working in the community management team for a bit because of making those videos. And they were just like, hey, you're good at this. And, I was 22 and dirt poor, and I just saw an opportunity to stay there after my internship, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I ended up doing that, and then I joined the old school RuneScape team. And I don't know how this is nowadays, but at the time there wasn't even really like job titles on old school, so that you'd have a job title, but there was no designers or anything. It was just like you just worked on
Interesting.
something for the game. Yeah, it was a very interesting environment, very cool environment to work in. And, I worked on some content there. That's like the first time. Well, I designed little bits for the card game too, but that was the first time I actually worked on people like really designing content, which was cool. Yeah, so that's what I did. But yeah, I went in as a QA tester analyst thing. We're just doing QA essentially. Like,
Super cool. Now, it's really interesting to hear all of this kind of setup and hear some of your influences because the reason that I originally, kind of found you and reached out was for the game that you somewhat recently released into early access, which is Dice with Death. Now, for the audience, can you just give kind of like your description of Dice with Death? How would you
sure.
explain the game?
Yeah, it's a pretty weird one. We took Farkle, which is like a medieval dice rolling game. You might have seen it in Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's actually playable in there, which is really cool. And we turned it into a roguelite because roguelites are a great genre. Like there's the joke of every single indie developer makes a roguelite, and I was kind of happy to fall into that. I really enjoy them, so I was fine with it. But yeah, I wanted to make something that is. I had the idea for the game a long time ago because a lot of people ask me. Well, I get asked from two sources, right? I get asked, "Did you make it because of Balatro, or did you make it because of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2?" And the answer is no. I actually first played Farkle in Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, and I kind of had the idea of like, because I was inspired by like Gwent from the Witcher card game, the Witcher game, and I was like, oh, this could be like an amazing game on its own if you just built on it. So that's like, yeah, the original one, which must be, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something now. It's the first time I ever really thought about it, but yeah, it's a roguelite where you slowly build up your dice bag, you change your dice, you get relics, they all do bizarre things that are very unbalanced and fun, sometimes. And you play against death. We wanted to give it like quite a unique perspective. I had the idea for the setting quite a few years ago when I rewatched the film The Seventh Seal, I'm a big cinema fan, which is probably the most pretentious sentence I'll say today, or at least top five. But yeah, it's an Ingmar Bergman film where a knight sits. It's a very good film. You should watch it. A knight sits and plays a game of chess with death, and it's kind of through the different stages of his life. And yeah, I don't want to spoil it in case anybody hasn't seen it, but it's a very cool stylized film. And I love this idea of sitting down. I've always been inspired by like depictions of characters like that, like Terry Pratchett and stuff. And yeah, I really wanted to do something that was like not what you'd expect the game to be in a sense. Because you talk to death, he's not your enemy. He's like, he is this like supernatural force, but he's very much so like your friend in the game. And you talk to him and you talk to him about different things. And yeah, we really wanted to do like a unique twist on it, I guess, in a few ways. And so it's a bit of a strange setting, but yeah. we have, just to get it in there, we have a free demo. Like, you don't have to buy the game or anything. If you want to go give it a look, you can for free. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's cool. I think it's fun.
everyone that is interested in roguelikes of any kind should check it out. One, it has an awesome art style, and it has, I mean, roguelikes are just offer up a lot of opportunity for like cool things. Now, you mentioned, kind of falling into that like joke of like every indie developer makes a roguelike. Can you talk me through, did you kind of just start with this idea of Farkle and then roguelike fit for that? Or did you know as an indie developer you wanted to be in that space beforehand?
No, not at all. We originally worked on some like prototype level stuff for like a turn-based RPG, kind of something like Banner Saga. But we ended up landing on roguelike because, well, for one, so I mean, players might not realize this as much. I'm sure any developers listening will immediately know what I say when I just say like scope. A roguelite, it's very, very easy to define what you're making early on. And, I say very easy. It's not that easy, but it's easier than some other genres to stay within those lines. Like when you're working on something that is a wider game, let's say you're working on like a first-person shooter or like a third-person, I don't know, what do people play nowadays? Like, like a third-person survival game or whatever. It's so easy to feature creep. Whereas I think one of the things, it's almost like a board game, right? Like everybody knows the rules of Monopoly, but you can write as many, like chance cards as you can think of. And I think that's how a roguelite works. It's you define your rigid rule set early on. So we knew that we had a few things with the game that we didn't want to change, like in core rules of Farkle. And we knew that we had some ideas of things that we did want to change. And we established those very, very early. And then we try to color within the lines as much as possible. And we're successful like 40% of the time. So it's better than 10% is the answer. But no, we really didn't run at it as like, we want to make a roguelite. It was like, I had a very specific idea. I could like see what the game was before we made it. And so it came from there, really.
Yeah, with that in mind, would you consider the game a small game? And how long did you work on it?
So we had one project fall apart, as everybody does. And then Joel and I, we went from having 0 to having our next fest demo like published within like 4 months, I think.
Okay, very solid.
Which was crazy. That was an intense period, yeah. But yeah, we've been working on it for, I guess, like 15 months now, roughly. Obviously, it's how long's a piece of string a little bit, because, we discussed the idea in the past, whatever. But yeah, probably like actually full-time working on it, probably 14 or 15 months, yeah.
Very nice. And is that are you a full-time game dev at the moment?
Yeah, I work on the game full-time.
Super exciting. And then another question I'm curious before we get into a couple more of just the like design decisions and stuff. This is kind of a topic that's come up with a few of my interviewees lately. And it's, on the spectrum of biz dev to like artist, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I know.
Where would you say you fall in that spectrum?
Oh man. Well, that's a good question because I know exactly what you mean. I guess it's kind of okay. So by trade, I'm a designer, right? Like, if I, God forbid, went and worked at like a 300-person studio and they said, "What job do you do?" I would probably be like a systems designer, something along that's gameplay systems designer, something like that. That's when I have worked for larger companies. It's doing that. In reality, I mean, as an indie developer, you kind of have to be a bit of everything, right? Like. There is some art in the game that I did. That's obviously we've worked with artists. Like we have a few artist friends who we've collaborated with on the game, and of course all of the good stuff is theirs. But sometimes time or just efficiency or whatever. Yeah, I get out I was painting just before we jumped on the call actually. But indie developers. It's a cliche thing and it's the boring answer, but I have to be something different most days of the week. Like, there are days that I sit down and so one thing that I do is, so I work with my friend Joel, as I mentioned, I do as much as I can to make sure that Joel can just sit and develop. So, like, that means that, yeah, maybe half the days I'm sitting and developing something too, but it also means that half the days I'm doing everything else. And it kind of works that way because Joel's like, he's like the most efficient human being you'll ever see. He's a psycho. So, you can just be like, hey, Joel, I have this idea for this whole feature that we should plan out and spend 2 months making. But the reality is, if you leave him alone for like a week, it'll probably be working in some form after that week. So that's pretty good. But yeah, just everything. What am I technically? I'm technically a designer, but in reality, in my actual day-to-day life, I'm just an indie developer. I just do everything.
Yeah,
and I enjoy doing different stuff. It's fun,
Yeah, an interesting piece of I guess maybe feedback or negativity I receive on a fair bit of conversations, particularly the ones that focus more on sort of business and marketing, is that people seem to think that any type of maximizing towards making money makes you less of a game dev. What do you think about that
that's
mindset?
The thing. Oh, that's the thing. And the funny thing is, I think that we do kind of like live in corporate slop world a little bit, like not just in games, but all over the place. So I think that attitude like comes from a good place, or at least I like to think it does.
Sure.
But the reality is like, and I tell this to people a lot, if you don't sell your game, you're not going to get to make your game for very long. David Lynch didn't get to make Twin Peaks because he hadn't ever done any commercial work and stuff, right? And yeah, I know he made Eraserhead first. That was a bad example. But like, it's, you have to balance those things. It's necessity and survival with like artistic pursuit, right? And I think that's something I think about a lot, honestly. Like there's, we've made changes to DICE even based on being sensible, even if it like went against our like purest artistic intention. There were things that we wanted to do that we decided not to, and there were things that we didn't want to do that we decided to do, because it was based on having player profiles. Like, one of the things that you do is you figure out, okay, who's going to play this game, and then it should always be something that you'd also play, because otherwise you're going to be swimming upstream. But you really should balance those things and like make the best game for your audience. Because I speak to a lot of people who are kind of maybe, I don't want to like speak insultingly, but like there's a big difference between people who have made a game and people who are either wanting to or in the process of starting to, right? The difference is probably trauma, but there is still a difference. So, and a lot of those people say to me when I'm talking to them, because I'm more than happy to speak to people and like give them my opinion and stuff. They say to me like, "Oh yeah, but no, I just know that if I make this really good, then I just know that like this type of person will love it and like it's gonna work, it's gonna succeed." And it's like, okay, that is like 50% of the way there. It's great that you believe in what you're doing. But how are they ever going to see it in the first place? Like, do you know how many good games are out there on Steam with like less than 10 reviews because of the build it and they will come approach? That's probably some of the best games ever made that just nobody's ever played. Like, because their developers spent all of their savings making them, thought people would just show up, and then nobody's played it. And the problem is, yeah, you can be like, well, they made exactly what they wanted to. It's like, yeah, but they're not going to make something again because they didn't do what they had to, which is all the like, I hate marketing, I hate writing social posts and stuff like that, but I do it, and I make sure I do it as well as I can because I want people to buy the game so I can make things in the future. So it's I think that attitude comes from a good place, but I think it's fundamentally naive, essentially.
Yeah, I like that mindset of just giving people, the generosity of trusting it comes from a good place. But yeah. A great nuanced take on just in like an oversimplification is like making money lets you make more art, and so you should try to make more money so you could make more art. But
absolutely, yeah, like you have to sell your paintings, right, to buy paint. It's as simple as that, really. Like,
yeah. Now, to take a pit stop, I think you're the first person I've interviewed that worked like for maybe a little bit of a bigger studio. In your mind, what is or maybe who is the person that would enjoy working in a studio? Because I think a lot of my audience is the maybe considering game dev, or maybe solo developers or
Sure,
hobby
yeah.
developers, who are the people that should maybe consider like actually getting into the games industry like that instead of just being a hobby developer or maybe a solo dreamer?
That's a really good question. Okay, so I think that there's different approaches, right? Because if we're talking about somebody who that would be right for long term, maybe even like for their whole career, it's maybe a different answer than like, should you consider it at all?
Hmm.
Because it's not for me, like long term. Like I'm far too much of a prick. Like I like working with like a small group or by myself. Like I'm very opinionated. I'm very like I'm fully aware of this, and it's like what makes me happy is kind of getting to indulge myself. And the other side of that is I'm pretty good at dealing with the consequences. You know, if I make a wrong call, like I don't beat myself up too much. Like I try to move on with the games and stuff like that. So I think there's two answers. Like for the people that it's right for long term, and this is always a hard thing to explain to people. I'm probably not going to do it particularly well now, so I apologize if this comes off wrong. But like doing things by yourself is a huge amount of responsibility to have. It is a very intense thing to have. Like my job, probably more than YouTube, is like my lifestyle beyond just my job. Like I might be doing other things, but I am, at least for part of that time, thinking about work, or like thinking, there's no 9 to 5 flip the switch kind of thing. And that's not like a saying, oh, indie devs are so cool and tough. Like, no, that's probably not that healthy a thing. And if you're somebody who that would affect more, then yeah, having like the routine and the like the normal level of responsibility that working in a studio or just in a larger group, whatever it is, would bring, that might be better for you. That might be healthier for you long term, and you should do what's right for you. If you're like me and you're basically just a prick, it's worth doing for like a short amount of time, or like like a medium amount of time or whatever, because you can learn so much. Like, not only in terms of like, of course, there, like when I was at Jagex, bear in mind this was like 10 years ago now, but when I was at Jagex, there were incredibly talented people that I got to meet and work with, and I learned a lot just from sitting near them and like chatting to them, right? And the inverse of that is, hey, there were some people who did a lot of things, in my opinion, wrong, and I also kind of got to see that firsthand and learn from that. So never think of it as something that you'd never do, because there is immense value. Never mind security, and if you want to save money or whatever as well, is very important. So, yeah, I think there's different types of people and different types of approaches to that, but it's by no means like, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. But I do think it's worthwhile experience. I learned so much when I was working at Jagex from a lot of people, like I say, in both positive and negative ways. So, yeah, it does have its benefits.
Yeah, it's just something that I think is overlooked a little too much in like at least in the YouTube game dev space, where everyone's a hobbyist or wants to do their own solo project. And I think at least there's probably at least a few people out there that should consider it and would be very successful in it. Now, going back to your game, Dice with Death, to make a little bit of a switch up here. So my understanding of the game is you're playing Farkle, but then you're adding relics in a sort of play the Spire kind of way to go. So do you have a favorite item or mechanic in the game that you think is particularly fun?
So obviously all of my opinions on it are colored by having made the thing, right? So the one that immediately comes to mind is there's a relic we made called Bronze Pickaxe. Which is a RuneScape reference, funnily enough, but it's a pickaxe, and it swings at the start of your turn, right? And it can do a bunch of random stuff. It can give you like another relic, even. You can like dig something up, or it can just its baseline is like rocks fall and just deal damage to both of you. And the reason it always comes to mind is because we just had such a nightmare building it, because we made it so complicated in how it worked. And we just tore our hair out with bugs for it. Like in our early playtest times, it was like any time we, got like a wave of players in or whatever, it would just be like pickaxe bugs. It's just like, oh no. Yeah, and it's so good as well, so they would all take it. So yeah, the funny one that I'm sort of Stockholm syndrome fond of nowadays is bronze pickaxe. But yeah, there's some fun stuff in there for sure. We made a character that was basically like making a whole new game, because you can like pick a character as kind of like your class in the game. And yeah, we made one called the Witch, and she just ignores all the rules of the game basically. So it was like making a whole new game, and we finished it and we were like, she's so fun and we love the Witch, but we were like, we're never doing that again. Like, we made it way too complex. But yeah, there's some fun stuff in there. And the thing that I like is that, you know, like in the same day, it literally happened today, I'll have somebody complain about how weak a relic is, and then I'll have somebody complain about how overpowered the same relic is. And that was kind of my goal with the game, was like I wanted people to naturally have different approaches and like explore different things and like have different things suited to their playstyles. And that kind of worked, which was cool. So yeah, I love all my creations equally is the answer to the question, except really it's Pickaxe because it drove Joel mad. So
why did you have such a strong conviction to stick with the pickaxe instead of cutting it if it had so many bugs?
Just refusal to accept defeat at that point, honestly. It was a nightmare, but the problem is it's a cool item. And we designed a lot of things. It's like an engine, right? So you can get other items that will give you additional swings on your pickaxe and stuff like that. So there was like a whole, it wasn't just like another relic. It was an intended build around for like a whole play style. So yeah, so we knew it was worth fixing, and people really liked it. Like, look, the reason we got so many bug reports on it and all that sort of stuff is because people were playing with it. And don't cut stuff that your players like. It would be a good bit of advice probably, unless it's really bad. So yeah, we just didn't want to accept defeat mostly.
Love that energy.
Yeah.
How do you guys go about balancing changes? I actually saw one comment that specifically said like every update has meaningful and good balance changes. They were really hyping you up. Do you do like a data-driven approach with win percentages? Do you take in user feedback specifically, or how are you handling balancing updates?
So yeah, most of it is just observationally. When it comes to data, like a little bit, but not. I've worked at places that balance by spreadsheet, and it was just a nightmare. I hate that. So the happy medium is somewhere in between. I always think that you should like use data to back up your observation. Don't do the other way around. Because I think a really good example of this, and I've explained this in a boardroom to somebody and watched their eyes glaze over, which was fun, but. Let's say there's like let's use, I don't know, like you've played like Hearthstone, right? Or like a card game, right? Okay, let's use Hearthstone. So let's say one character everybody's complaining about is overpowered, but then you go and look at the data and they have a 51% win rate. It's like, well, yeah, everybody's playing it, so they're evening out the win rate, because the larger the sample size is, the more it will regress to the average, even if things are, you know, extreme. And also when something's defining a meta, everything responds to it, and there's nothing exists in a vacuum in a game, or at least it's very rare for something to, right? You know, like, so one relic in the game, if it's so like there's relics in the game called the spears, and the more spears you have, the more it amplifies their effects. They all do something different, but the more different spears you have, the stronger the effect of each, right? And they're ridiculous. They're so overpowered. They're so good. If you just roll for the spears, you just win. And we constantly get comments, people just being like, hey, I love the spears. And it's like, cool. And that's fine. It's okay. It's a single player game. I think we really live in the world of like live service games having melted people's brains a little bit. Where live service, they want something to be really strong, and then they want to nerf it to the ground so that you buy the other thing, or, you know, you buy skins for the other thing or whatever. And that's like the cycle of live service games. But the problem is with that, people have started to apply that logic a little bit to single player games. And, you know, yes, there are relics in DICE that are both weaker and stronger by design. There's two philosophies here. Sorry, this is a bit of like a ramble, but there's two philosophies at play here, right? One of them is it's a single player game, so it doesn't matter if something's overpowered. Like, if something is really, really fun, I could put a Desert Eagle relic in and you shoot death in the head, and if players had a fun time with it, I'd leave it in the game. Like, it's a single player game, it doesn't matter, it's not harming anyone else. If you don't want to use it, don't use it, right? And we see that all the time. Like, we have leaderboards. You get like a little score at the end of your run in like the endless mode. So you can just, and so like the one multiplayer element in the game is you can just like leaderboard, compete against people. And I see people submitting scores with like crazy builds. And then I realize they're deliberately avoiding the strongest stuff to like see how high they can score with like worse stuff. And that's awesome. Like, that's what you should do in single player games. You should play what you think is fun. People are so concerned with like meta and all that sort of stuff nowadays, and it's just like, so who cares? You're sitting playing a single player game about playing dice with a giant skeleton. Like, no one cares how well you do. Just have fun, you know? Like, so yeah, that's part of it. Like, I deliberately leave things both strong and weak for players who want to regulate like their difficulty, and that leads into the second point, which is it is a hidden difficulty lever, right? The greatest game series that does this to perfection is like the Dark Souls games or like Elden Ring, where there are easily accessible ways of playing the game that are a significantly easier experience than other ways of playing the game. And it doesn't mean that any of them is like the wrong or right way to play. It's just you can self-regulate your difficulty level without explicitly doing it for players, right? Because nobody wants to select easy mode. Like, you're going to make somebody feel bad. But if you give them, you know, I don't know if you play any Dark Souls. I'm a big fan of like Soulsborne games.
Huge Dark Souls fan. Yeah.
Fantastic, right? So you'll get my references. So yeah, like, nobody wants to pick easy mode. But hey, if a player finds a Black Knight halberd and realizes it rips through people, they're going to use it. And what they've actually done is picked up like the easy mode halberd, right? And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's cool. Like, hey, you want to go out there as a beast, you want to get your Drake sword and just stomp the early game, go for it. Like, you play dice, you want to roll for spears and just curb stomp him, you can do that. Like, that's fine. So yeah, that's the other reason. So I think overbalancing is like the death of so many games, like homogenization and all that sort of silly stuff. I'd rather the game was like spiky and interesting, where it's like some things are challenging, some things seem ridiculous. Like, that to me is way more engaging than like just feeling like you're on a treadmill curve. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Elden Ring because it was by far From Software's most like widely popular game, like hugely popular.
Yeah.
And it
it's the easiest one, which is why.
Yes, it's the easiest, and it gives you by far the most tools to tackle a problem. I mean, you have Spirit Ashes, which can summon and be extra allies. You have
just look at Mimic here.
Yes, exactly.
It was automatic co-op mode.
But a lot of people would say that that's the most fun, or at least the most accessible, and could get the most people involved. When you talk about,
and it was a great decision. People bring that up thinking that they're like saying a gotcha, and my response is like, yeah, it was genius. Like, them putting Mimic Tier and stuff in, absolute giga brain move, because it's just like they gave players, hey, you can have a co-op partner that's you, but slightly stronger. But hey, you're playing single player. And it was an absolutely genius move that made the game so much more accessible to people. Same as like bleed damage in Elden Ring. It's still ridiculous. But hey, if you are struggling with Melania, go get Rivers of Blood and mash light attacks on her. Like, it's fine. And I think giving people their own way, they still have to discover that. It's still emergent gameplay. And giving them ways of discovering and like meeting their expectation of difficulty, I think, is a really smart thing to do. So,
yeah, well, and what it does is it allows a novice player who maybe couldn't tackle one of the early Dark Souls by themselves, it gives them tools to beat the game, to feel powerful. Even if it is a little bit easier, they still get to play Elden Ring and be a part of the experience. So
exactly,
I think
it's not a lesser experience. Like, because if anything, you could argue it's a greater experience because they're getting to experience the game in a way that they might have bounced off of it in previous titles. So it's newer to them. It's more exciting. So you could actually argue it's a greater experience than the people doing the hard stuff. And just for clarification, like, I'll happily do silly builds on Elden Ring. I love that stuff. But I also loved seeing some of my friends who'd like bounced off of like Dark Souls and Bloodborne love the game. So yeah, I thought it was very, very intelligent design.
Yeah. Well, then you always have the option of playing on level 1 with no armor for the people that
Yeah,
really want to
exactly.
create a challenge. So,
Yeah.
one last question on balancing. When you mention kind of hating like being a data sheet driven, or you've seen
Mhm.
that not go well, is it just because it pushes everything towards sort of 50% and then nothing is fun? Or kind of what are the issues with doing maybe like a solely data driven approach?
I think it's yeah, so yeah, if you're choosing between solely data or solely vibes, like vibes will be the better game every single time. Like it's not even a question. Because you lose the essence of fun. So typically I'm talking about single player games, right? Like multiplayer games, yeah, you have to be like a lot more considerate of like power levels, I guess, if you like. But in terms of single player, I just don't even think about balance. Look at like quality of experience, right? So a good example would be like, let's just use Dice of Death as an example, right? Like Death has a certain amount of health per level. If there was a relic in the game that allowed you to effortlessly one-shot him at higher levels on the hardest difficulty, that's not a good experience. Players are going to pick that. They're going to be like, oh, I finally made it to this level. And they're just going to be like, oh, I just won. Like, it's not, you're going to rob them of the victory, right? What you want is you want something like Rivers of Blood, where it's like, hey, you still have to do all the gameplay things you were doing, and you still have to do them right, but this is a strong option, and we're going to make this obvious to you. And if you do that, they will still feel, just not even they will feel like the reality will be they still get the gameplay experience that you intend. And I think that's where it comes down to, if that was on a spreadsheet, it's just homogenization like killed so many games. Like, not even just games, it killed like genres. Like MMOs is a great example, right? Like why is classic WoW so popular? Because sorry, that's my cat screaming at me. Why is classic WoW so popular? It's because of some of those friction elements that was smoothed out are still around, and they are all the better for it because people feel authentic. Hello. One sec, I'm gonna yell at my wife to get
You're totally fine.
He's probably just coming for a cuddle, but food will distract her. But yeah, I think like sometimes when you remove friction, you just get the treadmill effect, and that can really instill a feeling of like, why am I bothering kind of thing. And I think that the great excel of balancing is one step on the slippery slope to that. Not saying that it's not a good thing, obviously. You should monitor, things like that, but don't become solely reliant on it. There's no replacement for playing your game and seeing people play your game, like, ultimately.
You feel like you've hit a good place in balancing with Dice with Death?
I think it's pretty good, yeah. I think it's enjoyable. I think there's always... I very much so like to bring things up rather than nerf things. We have had to nerf a few things over the last year or so, but really we tend to look at how we can bring things up, or at least we try to. There are some things that we will be bringing up. Like, we're working on the 4th character at the moment, so we're kind of like not going to be updating for 3-4 weeks, whatever, while we get her ready for her initial state. But yeah, I think it's in a pretty good place. We've done some things as well that kind of allow... One of the things that I really wanted to do with the leaderboard, and we did, and it's kind of worked, which was cool, was I just split it out by character. So there's a combined leaderboard, and there's a character leaderboard. And I was talking to Joel about this when I explained why, and it was like, because if we do a combined leaderboard, 80% of like the top 50 or whatever are going to be the same character, no matter what we do. Like, that's another thing. I often see people talking about balance or design, and they're like, when everything's balanced, it will never be balanced. Like, there will always be a worst and a best, no matter how many changes you make, and players will always realize which is which, So I was like, look, 80% of the top 50 would be the same character. Instead, we'll make the primary leaderboards character specific, so you're competing on an even playing field against those other characters. And that's really helped. People have a number 1 to shoot for in their own class, essentially. It's like weight classes in fighting, right? So it's really good from that standpoint, and that helped assuage a lot of balancing concerns for me, where I was like, leaderboards, yeah, people might get frustrated if... So like the healer typically does the worst in the endless mode, And that would be a problem if it wasn't for the fact that there's a healer leaderboard. So really, you're just competing against the other healers. So there's always things that you can do to not get out the nerf hammer as much as you can, I think. I hope. Maybe it worked.
Yeah, it seems like a really smart decision. Now, another thing that DICE does really well, and even as I was like, kind of studying up on some of the reviews, even most of the negative reviews commented really positively about the art style. So are you the artist for the game? And how did you get such a cohesive, cool art style? Where did that come from?
So I'm not the artist for most of it. There is some of my art in the game, but it's by far the minority. I was like the art director though. Just out of necessity, really. And so, I mean, Death himself is made by my friend Carson, who's a wonderful artist. And then he's done a few relics as well, but we had a couple of artists do the majority of the relics, and I've done some relics as well. I paint just as like a hobby. I've always painted physically, so I've been like learning digital painting, which it's been useful for.
Very cool.
But, it's funny because in the early days, before the game was like at all popular, obviously it goes in waves at the moment. We're in early access, so like we release a big update, everybody comes and plays, and then they go away a week later because we're not really like full on marketing or anything, right? Like we do little bits here and there, but typically player activity. I mean, this is the way for every single player game. Like player activity happens in waves, right? So early on, when people came in, one of the complaints we got more frequently was about the art style, because I knew from day one that I wanted to do this really weird, like, mixed media thing, where I was like, I want to have this, like, physical table so that you can click. So I'm, like, very, I get very, like, I see things in my mind and I know that that's what something has to be. And one of the things that happened with the game was I knew that the player had to click the buttons to roll. And I mean, like, have physical buttons in some sense to roll and pass and stuff. So I was like, okay, we're going to make a physical table in game, like it is a 3D table, like, you can look around the scene and stuff. And I was like, it has to be that. Like, the thing that's going to make us not just be, and actually it's not even just because there's other really good dice games on Steam and stuff. Most of them tend to skew towards being 2D because why would you bother doing anything else? It's a dice game, right?
Right.
But I was like, one of the things that's going to set us apart, I wanted like a physicality is what I'm saying, basically. Like I wanted a physical bowl, I wanted physical dice, and I wanted players to like physically press the button on the table to roll the dice. I thought it would like tie them into the experience and like give that like physical sensation a little bit more. And that immediately led to some interesting thoughts, right? Because, well, that's fundamentally 3D. However, we know that we want to do like 2D with a lot of other things in the game. Again, scope comes into it, right? Like making a 2D art asset is much, much easier than making a 3D one for the most part. And so I immediately started thinking about what the game looked like. And I just knew that I wanted to do this really weird mixed media style where like we have 2D pixelized stuff and we have 3D, and we just try to kind of like marry it all together. And it was so funny because early on we used to get like the opposite. We used to get like, oh, the gameplay looks really cool, but I think it looks weird. Like I don't like that there's pixel art in a 3D environment and stuff. And then that was easily probably the most common complaint we got was like, oh, pixel art looks weird with the 3D stuff. But as we've worked on the game and like iterated it, and obviously like things have got more polished in a visual sense, they completely went away and people started really enjoying it. So, and now we even get comments like, oh, the mix of styles is cool. And I'm like, you should have seen the comments we got a year ago. But I kind of, I don't know. I wanted it to look unique, I knew what the game looked like in my mind before we made it. And it was a unique looking game and I wanted to chase that. And I think whether you like the style or not, I think it is a unique looking game. Like, I think I don't see many games that look like it. You might find games that like play similar, maybe they're using dice or just, you're comparing it to like Slay the Spire or something. Because it's so funny. People always want to compare it to Balatro because it's similar to dice poker, but it's actually like I like Balatro to be clear, but it's actually gameplay wise like one of the furthest away roguelite examples that I can think of in terms of a turn-based one. It's actually more akin to something like Slay the Spire when you actually break down how the gameplay works. Because of like, timers and threat and stuff like that. But yeah, it was really interesting. The art style I knew what it was going to be. And yeah, there were moments where I questioned myself and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work, but we kind of just stuck with it, partially out of necessity and partially just out of confidence, I guess, or, some sort of stubbornness. But Yeah, it's got to the point where people really enjoy it, which makes me very happy because I think I think the game's very unique looking. I'm very proud of how it looks. So
Yeah, clearly you found something that resonated. A lot of people I noticed were commenting on that, and I mean, I agree. I think it's a beautiful game, and it's definitely very
I mean,
eye-catching.
credit to the artists. Obviously, they did phenomenal work. But
yeah, I'm always curious how small teams organize themselves, and it sounds like your partner, I think you said Joel,
Joel, yeah,
is primarily the developer, and then you're maybe sort of a catch-all, jack of all trades, and then you hire out for art.
So we both do development, but Joel is like, he will make actual things for dice, and what I'll do is I'll run ahead and like prototype silly stuff, and kind of so I like do it in more of like a design forward sense, and then he does it in more of like an architectural development sense. There are obviously times that we just both need to work on something. That's fine. But yeah, typically speaking, like I say, I try to get the other stuff out of the way so he can focus on development. As for art, yeah, we had a couple artists with us who came over from previous projects, just on like, like a rolling contract, kind of like monthly thing. So yeah, we just hire out art when we need to, although we make everything we can ourselves, really, nowadays, especially just because it's one of those lessons you learn along the way. That's like art. It is obviously it's worth working with artists, but make sure that you know what you're going to be making and doing first, because I do see some, and this is more like a personal anecdote. I've seen friends of mine like paying for concept art and stuff for their ideas, and I'm like, it's cool, but like you're spending money on this and it doesn't exist, like make things in gray boxes. And I honestly, like, so much of dice started out as like prints on a screen. Like, we made the dice roller, so we had 6 dice rolling in a blank box. I think it was like some free asset, like wooden box we just put in the engine. And we just had dice like rolling in that, and then everything was just a print on the screen for a long time. And I think sometimes pursuing visuals can be a distraction from doing the hard bits of creating, like the actual program. But yeah, we hire out for art nowadays, but we try to make sure that we are very deliberate in what we need. And that's advice that I'd really give. That's one of those like unfortunate, like, commercial reality things where it's like, don't spend money until you know exactly what you need to spend money on. Would be a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, do you think you're organized in an optimal way, or would there ever be a way where you bring in a third person who maybe has an art focus and can do other stuff?
It would definitely be something that like we can say. It's such a personal thing though, isn't it? Like, it's a who is the person kind of thing. And I wouldn't really ever preemptively say no to anything. I just try to judge it when it came up. I know that's like a cop-out answer, but it's kind of true. If I met like, the problem is when you're working in, and this sounds silly, but when you're working as like 2 people, right? Like we have like a very almost, obviously sometimes there's something big that we need to like really put our heads together and like spend a while hashing out. But like for the most part, we work in like a pretty automatic fashion. Like we know what's up. We'll have a check-in, like we'll just ring each other every few days or whatever, and just stay on top of what we're working on. But we work like pretty automatically. Introducing another person's a big dynamic shift, especially if it's somebody not on the development side, because that is a gap that exists. Like that some people want to pretend doesn't, but it does. Like the programmers and artists have some pretty legendary spats on teams, and it's difficult because we'd go from understanding everything that we're talking about to then you have to like constantly be bridging that gap, right? So yeah, it's one of those things where I worked with somebody on dice that we had on for a month or 2, I think, doing some like technical artwork for us, called Eli, and they were brilliant. So yeah, I think like if I looked for somebody, I'd probably look more on like the tech art side, because I think when you're a small team, in terms of like permanent people who can work in engine are invaluable. It's the unfortunate reality that making games is very, very hard. Like very hard. Even using game engines in any sort of recognizable way is difficult. And I think for me, when you are, and I mean like a micro team like ourselves, right? I would struggle with the idea of bringing somebody on to work with us on like a partnership basis or something if they were like completely alien to game engines. But that's just personal preference, isn't it? Like I like prototyping weird stuff in engine and working with Joel on that. So it's just to not disrupt our style too much. But there's totally teams that do amazing work that are like a programmer and an artist. Like that's awesome. But when you have guys who like stretch across everything a little bit already, you kind of want somebody to like fit that flexibility too, I guess. So yeah, I think it's just a right person, right team kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that you point out there's just more dynamics than the skills they bring, what are the languages that they speak and how do they jive with all the people. So I think that's a good word. Jumping back into Dice, was there any big challenge that you came across in developing that sticks out to you?
Do you mean in a technical sense?
Yeah, however you hear the question, just anything that was a real roadblock that you found a way to get past it, either in design or technically or anyway, really.
No, it's I think the thing for us, and I guess this is worthwhile using as an answer because it's oh my god, it's when it starts happening, it's like I'm getting like Vietnam War flashbacks, but optimization. Like, all those tick boxes that you have no clue what they do in project settings in Unreal? Yeah, you should probably learn what they do. Because I can tell you somebody who didn't. It's me. And yeah, so, when you realize that you could untick a box that you don't use and boost everyone's FPS by 20 who's playing on like laptops.
Oh my gosh.
That's a pretty good lesson to learn. Yeah, so turn global illumination off. There's my advice. No, that's project specific. But yeah, I think like engaging with all the bits that you, I don't swear, but you don't care about, let's say, at all, is, and it's a necessary evil. It's like when I was talking about marketing, right? Like, I enjoy some bits of it. I enjoy like the challenge and like the numbers tracking and stuff, just because it's almost like design sort of stuff, right? But like the actual like writing social media posts and stuff, like no one likes that. The people who do like it run away from them, like that's a joke, obviously, but like it's one of those things. And like when you come to using technical tools, like, I work in Unreal every day, or I work in like Photoshop and stuff like that. Taking the time to really build up that level of knowledge with the tools you're using is so valuable. And especially when it comes to optimization, which is one of the things that we did not take seriously enough at the start. I spent like weeks just learning like technical, really, really boring stuff, like technical rendering and stuff like that. And like, performance pipelines and things. And it all means nothing until you actually take it seriously and look at it and you're like, yeah, I can do this relatively light work and make my game accessible to so many more people. And accessibility is so important, obviously from an accessibility standpoint, but from an optimization standpoint too, to get on as many platforms as you can. Do that stuff, have that stuff in mind, like before you ever click a new project. Like, be comfortable knowing what you're targeting and like the things that you can do to run as well as you can on those things. Because we didn't, and honestly, like a lot of our, like, now obviously not so much nowadays, but like in the early days, a lot of our negative reviews were people who should be able to run it well, who couldn't because we hadn't done some of the optimization stuff. So yeah, it was a hard lesson, but we learned it, and it's like we don't really get that brought up anymore, which is great. So yeah, take optimization seriously. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think it's just an easy thing to forget, and especially with a game like Dice, which doesn't on the surface appear like there would be, there's not thousands of explosions going on or something like that, where you would immediately think optimization.
We have had a few bugs like that which would crash the game, but that was a long time ago, thankfully. Yeah, it's easy to forget because you forget, like, we use Unreal Engine. We always get asked, like, whoa, why didn't you make this in Godot? It's like, because I'm an Unreal developer and there's two of us. Like we're not going to learn a whole new engine to like make a prototype. So, yeah, that's always a funny question. Always from players as well. Why didn't you make this in this? Because I'm an Unreal developer and I'd have to spend 6 months learning a new engine. But Yeah, it's a tricky one, and you forget that Unreal Engine is like they're using it to animate CGI in like
True.
Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Like there are some things in there that you really don't need turned on. So yeah, you can turn them off and save yourself a headache.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, this is another, kind of shifting gears to a new
Mhm.
segment of my questions here, but why did you guys end up choosing to launch in early access? That is maybe slightly against the current conventional wisdom that some people would maybe caution against that, but you guys chose that.
Yeah, we did. I think it is a very valid question. I think early access is really powerful if you know what you're getting into, which is a lot of people that are going to come and play your game for like an hour or two and give you very strong opinions on it, which is great. Like, I spoke before about like using feedback to identify trends rather than like getting too obsessed with singular pieces, which is a very important thing to do. But really, we just did it. I mean, I guess look, the real answer is kind of out of necessity. We're two guys working on it full time, so having like the money coming in from people being able to buy the game is great. And the other necessity, really, and honestly, maybe even higher than that, the key one is having a live studio audience. Like if something doesn't land, we can take it out, and then it's not in our, when we fire all the missiles and tell everybody about the game and email all the press or whatever and do all that stuff. A lot of those things and there have been plenty of things that didn't land like we thought they would. They're not in the game anymore. Like, and the stuff that did land is greatly expanded upon compared to where it would be. And you will go blind to things in your game. Like when you are working on something every single day, you will try not to hate it. You will hate it at times, but like more importantly, just don't go blind to things in it, because you will, like optimization, right? Like obviously I'm sitting on the machine that I develop on. It's a very like powerful computer, right? I just didn't think about it for ages. I was like, oh no, this is a simple game, it'll work fine. And then yeah, you get caught out by it and you can fix it. And early access gives you a lot more leeway on fixing that stuff. So yeah, it's just a necessity of like our style and our reality of development, really. And I think, hey, look, if you have the money and the resources and the confidence and the playtesting and all this other stuff to just go straight for a big old 1.0 release, go for it. Make sure you've tested the game extensively, but because your players will find bugs that you never even thought could happen. Some of the bugs we've had are outrageous, but like, I don't know how people do it. They send me screenshots. I'm like, how did you do this? They're like, my dice, what do we used to get, right? All my dice are outside the bowl. I'm just sat there like, what? And then they send me a screenshot. The dice have escaped. Obviously there's an invisible cone over the bowl that the dice will just bounce off of if they go high enough. I was like, how have you done this? And it turns out that they were like emulating it on a Mac, and something to do with that, like
That's crazy.
rendered the invisible cone. So every time they pressed roll, the dice just flew out of the bowl, and we were just like, okay. Yeah, so yeah, we fixed that for them, but yeah, it gives you a lot more leeway. I think it's a good idea personally. You can, some games nowadays, let's be honest, they just release and they kind of treat their first year as early access anyway. But I think it can be a very, very valid tool. Just use it as it's intended. It comes back, like, look, you've probably heard this from other people. You probably know this, right? Like, you can give all the advice and like all the tips and tricks and whatever that you want, but the number one reality is like, just make a good game and like give it a chance, right? Like get it out there, let people see it. And I think early access, if you take it seriously, people will take your early access seriously. Do you know how one thing that I love is we have never been accused of like being early access cash grab or anything. Because if there's a problem with the game, I'll just post and be like, yeah, this is broken, sorry, we'll fix it tomorrow. Like, take your early access seriously, realize that everybody who buys it in early access is essentially doing you a favor, and yeah, you'll be fine. Like, all of those negative connotations are from the abuse of it, largely by corporations. Like, yeah, just take it seriously. Like everything, just take it seriously, you'll be fine.
Now, how did you guys approach early access in terms of how much game you were giving? Were you going for a fully developed vertical slice, or were you sort of doing, just how did you think about that and how much of the game you had completed and offered?
That's a good question. Yeah, we so it was, I would say it was like a vertical slice plus. Like we had 2 characters in there and 2 of the difficulty levels. So now, just for context, there's 3 characters. Well, okay, it's slightly selling ourselves short because there was like 40 relics or something, and now there's like 100 or something. But in terms of the core content, there was 2 characters and 2 difficulty levels each, and now there's 3 characters, 4 difficulty levels, and the second game mode, which is like the endless multiplayer one. So we knew that, obviously, that's not to be like, look how much we've done. It's more to be like, just to show you the scale of what we originally had. So I would say it was like vertical slice plus, like, maybe like plus. Like it had replayability, which was important to us. But really, we used, and do this if you can, it's very, very good. We used NextFest as a testing ground. So we made the build that released was basically the NextFest build with like all of the bugs from it fixed, because we just wanted, like, I say all, good amount of the bugs from it fixed. We had a short window of time to do that in, and we just knew that we wanted to. I was like, look, more than like content or anything like that, we just want the first build to like be playable and people to be able to enjoy it. Like, we knew the content was already there, so we were like, okay, we're going to use the next first build. We're going to like fix everything we can, add a few new bits, and that was our early access, whatever you call it, 0.1, I guess. So yeah, obviously again, it's super personal to your project, but if you can do something like NextFest or like itch.io or some way of just getting people to play your game. And, I was tracking like the median playtime, like, we were getting a lot of feedback and stuff. And just be honest with yourself about like, is it ready to be something that people can play, really? Yeah, it's very personal to your project, but just be honest with yourself, really. But don't kid yourself either way. Don't talk yourself down, and try not to talk yourself up too much. And just try to judge things best you can, I guess.
Yeah. When you say you did NextFest, do you mean you launched a demo in NextFest, cleaned up the bugs, and then did an early access launch after?
Yeah, our demo was pretty big, though. Our demo was essentially the early access build, yeah.
Okay.
So
very cool. Now, do you guys have any kind of roadmap or amount planned for what you want to complete in the game, or is it sort of just working until you get it to a state you feel good?
Well, so yeah, I mean, very pertinently, I said we're working on the 4th character at the moment, and she's going to come along with, we haven't like spoke about them, she's coming along with like some other surprises too in terms of content. It's going to be a very big update, and the goal has kind of been that's probably going to be our 1.0 update as it currently stands.
Oh, exciting.
With the full intention of like, and we've already spoke about this in a community post, just saying like 1.0 is like 1.0. It's not, it's not the end of updates. Some games do that, and that's not like saying they do it wrong, but some games are like, we're going to make everything we ever want in early access and then release the game. And I think that's cool, but like, to me, I think that's something that's interesting, right? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, because it's like, something I go back and forth on is like, should your 1.0 be everything you would like to make for the game, or should it be what you deem as like the complete core game, essentially, right? And I think that's something I go back and forth on. So that's kind of how we're viewing it at the moment, is like 1.0. I think maybe a good way of thinking of it, at least how I kind of think of it, is if the 1.0 build, and then we were just like, like God came down and was like, you could never update the game again or you're in trouble, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I hate it, but I'm okay with that being the state of the game, like that being the content, that being the state of the game and how it plays. That to me is what 1.0 should be. And then obviously we want to, like we've already said, like we're working on a 5th character that we're going to do post-launch. It's just to us, like that 5th character, who's ridiculous and he does some very strange stuff. He doesn't really play the game at all, but he just does some very weird stuff. It's kind of fun. But that to us like is superfluous to like what that minimum core product is. And minimum is a funny word to use there, because I mean it in the terms of like minimum full game, but
right,
that to me is kind of, and I don't know, I guess you could ask a lot of different people and get different answers on that, but yeah, if it felt like the right stage for us to be like, this is the game, right? And we're going to add to it, and we're going to make a lot more stuff. And of course, success dependent. Like, let's say we release, right, and we sell a gorillion copies. Like, hey, we'll do characters 6, 7, and 8. Like, hey, we'll put multiplayer in. Like, we kind of experimented with that. If anybody who plays the game hears me say that, I'm going to regret it. But we kind of experimented with multiplayer, and some thought ideas behind it and stuff. So, yeah, it's one of those things where you have to judge it by like where you are as a team and like where the game is, I think. But we feel pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think my 2 cents on it, just as I've talked to different developers, if I were going to release a game, and this is more of the like biz dev mindset, like my brain goes to whenever you do 1.0 launch, that is the most traffic you're ever going to get. Unless you have a strange anomaly cult classic game, which if you're developing as more of like a passion project, work on it forever. But if you're thinking in terms of like studio or long-term success, I think you would want your 1.0 to be 90 to 95% of the work that you plan to put into it, because that's what everyone's going to play. Now, there is some benefit to adding, more median playtime, to adding more concurrent players, which can be done by adding more play modes. But if I think I were going to release a game, I would plan to mostly be done other than bug fixes and maybe like one more fun mode. And that's more from the business side.
No, that's
what I've heard people
completely valid.
about.
I mean, that's what we figure out as well, right? Like, that's very valid. I think, that to be honest, that's kind of what ours is. It's like, it is 90% because we know that we want to do the 5th character. And then, like, further content on from that would essentially be success dependent. Like, if the game gets up enough of that audience that we're like, we can even do like a free big update, but it will like, we're selling enough and it's like got enough organic traction that doing that is worth it algorithmically, essentially.
Right.
Then yes, of course, we'd love to do that. But at the same time, and that's what you said is a great point, right? About it being like 90 to 95% of the work you intend to put in. I think that's like such important phrasing, because one thing that people do is they work on games for way too long. Like, and it's funny because that sounds like a bad thing to say. Be like, oh, you should be as quick as you can. But like, it's not that. It's more just like, you should judge. And I mean, if you're doing this commercially, if you're doing this like as a hobby or just, it doesn't apply. But like commercially, let's say you launch into early access and, you get like a small audience. Maybe you sell a few hundred copies, which is great. Like, that's a few hundred people saw your game, were like, hell yeah, I want to play that, right?
It's awesome.
And then it kind of peters out. There's a strong argument that you shouldn't spend another 18 months working on that game. But you see a lot of games that do. And then they launch, they don't really recapture the same success as their early access launch, because, maybe they got like a couple of streams or like YouTube videos or something. And I think they get very disheartened. And, obviously it's like financially damaging and stuff too, right? And I think it goes back to that like necessary evil in order to be in a position to create. Like, don't work on things. It's not longer than you have to, because if you only work on things as long as you have to, then you're going to make some pretty shoddy stuff. But don't work on things longer than you should, and that's much harder to judge. So, and that's kind of what we're trying to do and be sensible with, where it's like, we'll do 1.0. We'll probably do the 5th character, like a month, 6 weeks, 2 months after, really like he's in progress as we do 1.0. And then, we'll use that time while we're doing that to judge, like, okay, how much further do we push this kind of thing? Like, if we're already talking about, like, ideas and, like, I've made some, like, weekend prototypes of, like, game 2, right? Because it's an important thing to do. Like, you have to be looking forwards. You can't just be staring at the floor. So, yeah, I agree. I think you phrased it very well. With, like, the work you plan to do, like 90% should be in 1.0. I agree.
Yeah, and that for me just comes from a place of like wanting more people to succeed and be able to make more games.
Yeah.
And I think you have to, like you said, it's the necessary evil of taking on the sort of business brain a little bit to think about how you're valuing your time. So
yeah.
Now, another topic I was really curious to ask you about is sort of like marketing and business stuff, if we could shift gears once again.
Yeah, of course.
Something that you talked about in one of your videos was that you've been able to achieve a really low, relatively relatively low on Steam refund rate.
Yes.
How do
Yeah,
you
we
think
have.
you have been able to achieve that? Is there anything in particular in your design philosophies or any tips you have for that?
Made a good game? No, I don't. Okay, so this is really interesting, right? Because there's even a little bit of a mystery here to me. Because we've never had an above average refund rate. I will just say that. But we have had an average refund rate. So the average refund rate on Steam nowadays is like 11%, I think, and then it's about 12% for early access games, as you'd expect. A little bit buggy, a little bit, less finished, whatever. So we used to sit at around 10.5. Like, we used to sort of wobble between like high 9, 10.5.
Okay.
Which I was pretty happy with for an early access game. I was like, oh, that's cool. People play and they get bugs, and because some people think like, and I think this is more of like an aspiring developer thing. They think that you'd get a refund and you'd be like distraught, right? But it's not the case, because like people refund for all sorts of reasons. They buy it on their 15-year-old Lenovo ThinkPad and the game doesn't open. They're going to refund it. Like, that's fine. Or they just buy it and they just don't have time to play. I've done that. Like, I've bought games, not had time to play them, and be like, oh, I better refund them before I can't. Don't take it like personally when you get refunds, right? I think that's like a big. And some people just don't like games. I'm sure everybody who listens to this, and both of us, there are world famous, super popular games that just personally you don't really enjoy. That's completely fine. And I completely accept that a lot of people, as the creator of a world famous, brilliant game, it's like, I completely accept that some people don't like it. That's completely fine, right? So the mystery is, well, it's not really so much of a mystery, but there was a distinct point that it started happening where our refund rate just started plummeting. And nowadays it's like 7.4%, I think 7.5% off the top of my head, which is really good.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing that did it was just iterating the game. Like, I like to think that, of course we still get refunds, right? But like, I like to think that we've updated the game and communicated clearly enough. And that is one thing that I think we've done pretty well. Is like, be constantly kind of like, this is a work in progress. We are updating, we're adding stuff. That a lot of people who wouldn't have stuck around kind of were like, okay, well, even if there isn't enough there for me right now, I'm going to come back in a couple of months. Like, and we've won some faith by them, maybe, I don't know, just like, what would the way to word it be? Like, we've kind of like won some goodwill from them, like we've had people say like, oh, I want to support you guys, so I'm going to like come back in 6 months. Right.
That's cool.
And it's really cool. Like, it's super lovely to see that from people. And it just comes down to communicate what the game is clearly. Like, I never want anybody to buy the game thinking it's. And obviously, you'll still get refunds doing this. Like, this just sticks in my head. I got a refund, so you can, in case people don't know, when you refund a game on Steam, just for anybody who might not be a published Steam game dev listening, when you refund a game on Steam, you can type a reason for the refund. And the thing that a lot of people don't know is that we can see what you type there. So a lot of people think that's like messaging Steam, like explaining why you want a refund. It's actually not. It actually goes to the developer so we can see why you refunded it. So when you type hilariously abusive things in there, I do see those. Thank you. But I got one once that was like, I thought this was a boomer shooter, like bolt gun or something. I think they referenced bolt gun.
Sure.
And they were like, but it's not.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Obviously,
I can only think they bought the wrong game by mistake. Sure. I mean, bolt gun is sick, but I was like, how did you? What is
that's
happening?
hilarious?
Like, yeah, that one always sticks in my mind. So you do get some funny ones, but yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, don't be too harsh on yourself. They will be higher in the first place because bugs, lack of content. Some people just don't like early access. That's completely cool. But yeah, I don't know. Ours went really low, and I think it's just updating the game like mad and being open as we can be with communicating, kind of what's up. Like, that's been the plan. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of a mystery to me, to be honest. I mean, it's probably just me not wanting to accept that the game's quite good nowadays. But, yeah, definitely around like October, November, it started really dropping. And that is when we did some pretty big updates into the game. So it would align with that, I guess.
Yeah, it probably is just as vague and true as just make a good game. But now you've also labeled DICE a successful launch. What does just the word successful in terms of game dev mean for you?
I mean, to be completely honest, it's making enough money that I can comfortably be like, oh, if I never sell another copy of Dice again, I could spend, I mean, let's not be ridiculous, but let's say like, oh, I could spend 6 months making something else and then release it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. So that to me is, I love making games. I love like creating art and stuff. Like, I have the comfort to be able to do that. So that to me is like a very fortunate success, basically.
Yeah, that's incredible. Are you able to share how many copies you've sold or any sort of framework for how well the game's done?
Yeah, let me open up. I'll give you the live numbers.
Oh, yes, let's go.
All right. As you can imagine, as any developer does, I accidentally have like 6 tabs of Steamworks open. So, okay. So as of today, minus refunded units, we have sold. Actually, I'll just give you the lifetime unique users. That's more interesting. We've sold 15,241 copies.
Very good.
Well, that's how many people played the game. We've actually sold like slightly over 16,000, but apparently there's just a bunch of people who never opened the game. So thanks, I guess.
That's awesome.
I'm glad you did and or didn't enjoy the game. Sure.
Yeah. Now, do you have any hopes of what the game will do in 1.0 in terms of magnitudes of what you've already done?
I would be happy. I would love to sell 20,000 copies, like total. I don't mean like edition.
Yeah,
that would be great. But I would love to break 20,000. Like maybe in that month of early access, maybe in that month of 1.0, whatever that might be. Yeah, breaking 20,000 would be very cool. We did. Ooh, how many did we do in the first month? Let me see if I can find that. Because we did pretty well when we launched because one of the things that we dealt with, right, was like a very condensed launch period compared to what would be ideal, just because of, we wanted to get out there and exist and, start making a little bit of money and having like a live environment, because we knew that we'd need a live environment to develop the game in. Sorry, I'm just getting the first 30 days of when we went to early access. That was May the 7th.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I honestly love when people give us a little bit of the back end stuff. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's what's valuable to do. Like, I think it's, I hate when people give this like super strong advice without, but I won't tell you what I've done. Oh, yeah, right. Cool. I'm going to disregard what you're saying. Yeah, we sold 1,500 copies when that was launching with about 6,000 wishlists after Next Fest. So we had a pretty good conversion rate from that. And that was just in the first 30 days. We sold 1,500 copies. Obviously, we have a much bigger wish list nowadays.
That's
one thing that we've done well is gained wish lists.
Yeah, that's also a super good long tail to go from 1,500 to 15,000 and continue sales. Have you guys done any like particular marketing, or has that just been like natural traction?
We've done little bits here and there. I mean, obviously the Northern Line video is insane. The Northern Line video, I think we got like 7,000 wish lists in like a day or two. And that kind of like catapulted us into being. I think that Steam has like, I know there's very popular theories about what Steam does and like specific buckets and stuff, right? But there was a noticeable shift after that in like just our baseline like wish lists and like baseline people looking at the page and stuff. So I think it kind of gave us a permanent boost in a sense. But yeah, one thing we've done very well is just like passively farm wish lists. I think people see because I know nowadays like I mean, I don't know what you'd think the percentage would be. I'm curious to hear, but it feels like a lot of people, because of like early access woes of a lot of games, see an early access game and even if they really want to play it, they just ignore it until it's launched, right? And so we farm wish lists passively pretty well. Like today, we sold like 20 copies today, right? It was the end of us being on sale, so we sold quite a few this morning. But we've gained like 30 wish lists, so we're actually positive in wish listing for today. Which while being on sale, that's really good if you can stay positive on wish lists.
Yeah.
So we have like 27,000 wish lists now, which is pretty cool.
That's fantastic.
So I mean, hey, hopefully that turns into something. But I will just be happy, keeping the lights on and going to baseball games and making games. That's pretty much my entire hobbies. So yeah, that's the goal.
I'll be really curious to see how your 1.0 release is, because The wisdom, which is only coming from Chris Zukowski, is all I really know. But he
Yes.
effectively says you just get one launch. And so I think what he would say is that early access is your launch. And when you go to 1.0, you won't get the same kind of fanfare. But clearly you've gained so many wish lists that I'm not sure if that will be true for you or not.
I think that's probably accurate for like a more typical case. But when we had to go to early access in a very rapid fashion, I still don't think it's fully true. Like what I see numerically is like the average can be maybe you can expect like 60 to 70% of what happened at your early access launch.
Okay.
But hey, if we got 60 to 70% of that, I'd be completely fine with that.
Right.
So yeah, I think I know obviously that website and he's like very, very popular. And I've read like bits and pieces on it. And it seems like very well researched and like very, very valuable. But I do think there's some people take like things from that website as like absolute gospel.
For sure.
Whereas I'm much more of like if anything that does not come directly from the source, meaning Steam essentially, anything that doesn't come directly from what you are speculating on is analysis, right?
Yep.
And analysis can be incredibly valuable, but it is by no means like an objective truth. Because there's things that I've read on there that I've been like, well, actually, from what I've observed, that doesn't seem to be the case as much. But yeah, for the most part, things that I see coming from there seem very, very good. But I do just think some people use it as like a one-stop shop, and I'm like, yeah, but like, look, we live in like algorithm hellscape world, right? So it's like, I don't trust that the way, and like, I don't know if you ever look at like Twitter or something, right? But it's like, it feels like they change the algorithm weekly on there. So it's like, you know, an article might describe it pretty spot on, but who knows if a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, that's still going to apply. So use it as like, and I do think that's like one of the best knowledge sources you could find, but use it as like that. Use it as a source, like another thing to add into your like planning and analysis of what you're going to do. Don't use it as like, you know, oh, I have 6,800 wish lists. That's not 7,000. I can't launch. I think there's more to it than that at times, to be honest.
Yeah, well, there's always a danger in listening to a single source. And through interviewing different people, I've just learned that there's like many routes to success in game dev, which is incredibly encouraging. I mean, there's not only one right way. And if you don't do it that right way, you're going to fail. But like you said, it's clearly super well researched. It's really good content. It comes from a really, successful place even, but it doesn't mean that's the only thing that you can listen to or that's the only way to success. So I think just important. And yeah, I'll be following your release, just to kind of see like, scientifically what happens on release day. So that'll be
maybe I can pop back and I'll give you some numbers after we do it or something.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah. Once things settle, if you want to come back on, I'd love that.
Yeah, I'm very curious because I do know that I do know Steam does like email wishlisters when a game launches from early access. So I would assume, based on our like probably irregular discrepancy between our pre-early access wishlisters and our pre-1.0 wishlisters, I would assume that there will be some noticeable impact from transitioning to 1.0.
I imagine so. Yeah. Well, and like you said, there are just a large group of gamers that will not play an early access game just because of a lot of the bad will that's been done in the space. And so it's
not entirely a bad decision, like it kind of makes sense, to be honest.
Yeah. I liked your mindset of like anyone that buys your game right now is doing you a favor. I think that's a healthy mindset as a developer of like, we're not done yet, but you're still willing to pay us. That's awesome. Like,
yeah,
so
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. Like, it is a show and obviously, you should give them like a good value proposition, right? But it's still a show of faith to an extent that you're going to deliver upon the things that you're speaking about. So yeah, I think it's very valuable in that sense.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing those numbers. Speaking of numbers, I have another just kind of random question that popped up. I was reading one reviewer specifically said, and it's so funny listening to one person leave a review. They said something like, death always rolls doubles or triples or something like that. But it did inspire a question for me in just that I've done a little bit of learning about how like humans don't really understand statistics. And so
Yeah,
I was wondering if you've done any manipulating with RNG to
yeah,
make
yeah.
it
Okay.
feel like what it should be. You know what I'm
No,
asking?
no, we haven't. And yeah, the existence of those reviews implies that perhaps we should have, but no, we haven't. We one of the things that we really wanted to do was make it so that death is essentially so you can play as death in the game. Like
Oh,
you
that's
can't as a
cool.
player, but like technically speaking, you could just set your player class to death and get his relics and his dice. No, he plays exactly like a player. He has dice and relics and yeah, some of them are very strong for difficulty's sake. He's essentially the boss that you're going against. But no, we don't really manipulate anything. I should say, really, we don't manipulate anything at all. He plays the game the exact same way as you, to the extent that he actually does click on the roll button. Like, in a technical sense, he's just an emulated player. That's all he is. All that happens is the game takes a turn after you, and the exact same. So we're talking technical terms. When you play, your character pawn, if you like, is our BP character base, which we then apply, like what class and everything you are. It's just our blueprint. And Death is the same. He's actually just another character base, like playing the game. And he takes a turn that locks you out of controls after your turn. That's all it is. There's no behavioral stuff. Well, okay, so the only behavioral stuff he has is he has some logic about when he will choose to roll again in a risky roll and when he won't. So, like, the lower health he is, the more likely he is to take risks. And, yeah, so, like, if he knows... So let's say that you've put a bunch of poison on him, and he knows that next turn he's dead, he will roll, like, super riskily to try and beat you in his turn. Because he knows that it's over, basically. So that's the only custom behavior for Death, and that's just decision-making. Yeah, there's no... Because players are, I know that you have to make Death roll well sometimes. It's like, no, we actually don't. And players are like, I know that if we're rolling too well, you make us fumble. I'm like, no, trust me. I wish we had. The game would have been way easier to make. Like, how the game works is you press roll, your dice, it goes back to what I said about physicality. Your dice physically roll. And then we actually read the highest points of the dice. We see what faces they are. They all have sockets on the meshes. We see what the highest socket is. That's the number of the dice, and then we do all the maths. It's as honest a game as you could play from that sense. Yeah.
That's a cool look behind the scenes. And it's always just kind of funny listening to like an individual player's experience because maybe they did have death roll 7 times in a row good. Like you have random
confirmation bias, right? Like you go to the casino, you remember the spins where you won everything and you remember the moment you lost everything. You don't remember all of these statistical means in between. And that's completely natural behavior, so I don't really get like offended when I see this or anything. I'm just it's in the nicest way possible. They're quite funny. Like, I know you make Death roll really well, and I'm just there like, dude, I wish do you know how much easier our lives would have been if we predetermined the numbers and just rolled the dice to match them? Oh my god. Like, the game would have been done 8 months ago. Like, the fact that we did the face reader alone, none of it's like a plugin. We built the whole game from the ground up, and it's I wish he cheated. That's all I can say in honest response to that. If I could go back, I'd just cheat all the players all the time. It'd be way easier.
That's awesome.
There'd be no dice flying out of bowls for one. That'd be nice.
Do you think that finishing a game is more about passion or discipline?
It's a good question. I think ultimately discipline, but I don't think that you can game dev is, and this is like, I know this is like an oversaid thing, but game dev is incredibly difficult and it's incredibly punishing. And you have people who are developing, financial software, like websites or whatever. They don't really have like a live audience leaving reviews on their stuff, whereas you do in games, which can be amazing and it can be a huge source of encouragement. And some days it can be pretty disheartening, right? And I think that if you're not passionate about the core concept, your discipline will fail. So I think they're a little bit symbiotic, but honestly, probably discipline. Like so I'm a designer, right, by trade. Like, I do development and stuff, obviously, but like, I categorize myself as a designer, and that means that I will have stupid ideas for games, and I'll whip up a prototype like on a Saturday or something, right? And even if I'm having a lot of, if I like show Joel, I'm like, hey, look at this stupid thing I built, and we're like, oh, this is cool. On Monday, I close it and I work on dice, right? Even if I've done that every day for the past like 14 months or whatever, I still have to do that. Like, even if I don't feel like it at the time, I'm very lucky in that, I think the game's cool. I don't mind working on it. But in a year's time, if it still had to be worked on, it would still have to be worked on. Like, so yeah, I think discipline is very, very difficult and very important. Like, I do think that you have to be realistic, pragmatic, and yes, like stick to some sort of. You don't have to sit and work night. I don't sit and work like Joel is a lot more like a ordinary work, and I say ordinary, a lot more like a regular schedule kind of guy than me. Like he'll boot up his PC at 9, work until 6, and then stop or whatever, or like later in the day. But like I'm the complete opposite. Like I might not do anything for a day and a half while I'm just thinking about something, and then I'll just spend 2 days making something straight. Like, and be fair to yourself in like how you work, but you have to keep discipline and actually do the work. Because I'm sure that you're aware of, like, a lot of people want to make games and a lot of people talk about making games. A fraction of them ever actually do, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
Like it sucks at times, but at the end of the day, you get to make games, which is fun. So.
Yeah, thanks for that insight into just kind of your view. This has been a super fun interview. Thanks for sharing so much. Let me leave you with one final question. So this is the Dev Dream podcast, and I'm making it honestly to keep myself inspired, to keep invested in making games and inspire others. But I'm curious for you, what would you say is your game dev dream in this season of life?
Oh my goodness. I have no idea. No, I would like to that's a very good question. I would like to not have to work on dice anymore. I think obviously everybody would say like making their dream game, right? But I don't think that I have like a singular dream game. I think more accurately being in the position where I can like always pursue something that I find like creatively satisfying. Which I'm very lucky in that I do with dice, and I think to me, like, game 2, maybe inching the bar ever so slightly more towards, like, creative freedom from, like, commercial necessity.
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever want to go over, like, 50%, right? But, like, let's say, if we're on, like, 20-25% right now, maybe the idea of, like, game 2 being 30 and then 35 or whatever, like, I think that's, like, a good goal to have. So maybe that's my goal. Maybe having, like, a little bit more freedom to... Because I like some really weird games. I have like quite esoteric taste in a lot of like, not even just games that I play. I play like normie games, of course, but like in games that like inspire me, I have some like fairly esoteric taste, and I would love to indulge some of that like comfortably, I guess. But we'll see what happens. I mean, either way, I'll be pretty happy. Like.
Yeah, well, Connagh, that's a great dream. I hope you're able to make that a reality. And thanks for joining me today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for watching this entire episode with Connagh. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Once again, consider subscribing if you haven't already. It really does help boost the channel and attract things like advertisers for the future, and I just really appreciate it. If you're looking for another great game dev conversation, I think you would enjoy this one on the screen. Thanks again, my friend.